If you've ever been disappointed or frustrated with the information or care you've received for your mental health and well-being, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Living Beyond ADHD podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow-through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Carl Jung said, "I feel it is the duty of one who goes his own way to inform society of what he finds on his voyage of discovery." Jung's quote inspired this episode for today. I feel it's both my duty and moral obligation to share with you what I've found out that I trust will benefit you and help you create a better quality of life. So here's some hard truths here in the United States. The DSM-5 is the manual that clinicians use to diagnose mental health conditions. Adult ADHD is the only diagnosis that includes executive function skill challenges, and that makes up about 80% of the ADHD diagnosis. Chronic depression, anxiety, trauma, addictions, illnesses, and more oftentimes result in underdeveloped executive function skills. Yet the list of symptoms indicating these underdeveloped skills isn't part of the diagnostic criteria for any of these conditions. And there is no diagnosis of executive function disorder or dysfunction or underdevelopment or anything like that in the DSM-5, latest version 2013. It appears that the only way to get to your executive function skill issues is by way of a diagnosis of adult ADHD. And there are adults who don't have ADHD, and yet they do have underdeveloped executive function skills. The ICD is a coding manual that's used for medical condition diagnoses, as well as insurance billing for medical and psychological conditions. The ICD-11, latest version, which is 2022, just now added ADHD to its list of diagnoses. And there's now billing code for impaired executive functioning. There's no academic requirement for any training, pre-license nor post-license, about adult ADHD. This means that the thousands of mental health professionals licensed to practice won't know how to identify, diagnose, or treat us adults with ADHD unless they seek training outside of their mainstream education, as I did. Many adults spend years working with a therapist who doesn't bring up ADHD because they lack the training. Instead, it could be you who asks them if they think you have adult ADHD. Perhaps they agree with you, but not because of any formal training, if they don't have it. If a mental health professional is seeing couples where one or both have adult ADHD and doesn't have any specialized training in adult ADHD, they're working with the couple as if the ADHD doesn't exist and giving meaning to situations that isn't necessarily correct. I haven't explored all the international licensing boards, only those in the United States, and what I've shared is what I found. For other diagnoses and treatment where executive function skills are underdeveloped, such as depression, anxiety, trauma, addictions, traumatic brain injury, and chronic illnesses, the development of executive function skills is derailed, just as it is in adult ADHD. And none of these other diagnoses include the same list of executive function skills that adult ADHD does. If you've been diagnosed with any of these conditions, these other conditions that I mentioned earlier, other than ADHD, mental health professionals wouldn't typically be focused on your executive function skills. They'd be focused on your symptoms of your depression or anxiety and their elimination. Yet your chronic depression or anxiety could be due in part to your underdeveloped executive function skills. More to consider in case you want to get diagnosed with impaired executive functioning. Mental health professionals in the United States primarily use the DSM-5 for diagnosing, but rely on the ICD-11 codes for insurance billing purposes. This can cause confusion and conflict when a disorder is classified different or not at all from one manual to the other. In the case of executive function disorder, there is no code in the DSM-5, and so no diagnosis can be made using that manual. And with no code in the DSM-5 for executive function disorder, and the billing code for it is buried in the ICD-11 and called impaired executive functioning, it's no wonder that no one is getting diagnosed with executive function disorder or underdevelopment along with their other diagnoses. In case you want to read about this code for impaired executive functioning, it can be found via online search as ICD-11 MB21.7. The description reads, impairment in higher level cognitive abilities, such as planning, sequencing, concept formation, abstracting, and decision-making. Does any of this sound like what you've been experiencing? And what is called the parent code can be found as ICD-11 MB21. The signs, symptoms, or clinical findings involve cognition, which is your thinking, and are indicative of a disturbance in mental abilities and processes that are related to attention, memory, judgment, reasoning, problem solving, decision-making, or comprehension, or the integration of these functions. This description, plus the other, represents so many of the adults that I work with who don't have a diagnosis of executive function disorder. Do you understand now why it's not your fault, and yet it is your responsibility to take care of this if you don't want to continue to live with these limitations and challenges for the rest of your life? And do you understand how it's not the mental health practitioner's fault either, since they aren't made aware of the gaps in their education so they can fill in the gaps? However, it is their responsibility to do no harm to those they're attempting to help. And not having training in adult ADHD and especially executive function skill development is a huge missing piece. So, it's not important to wait for a diagnosis to help yourself with your executive function skill development. There are no skills and pills, so waiting for medication won't help the development of these skills. And if you see someone who doesn't know about the diagnostic code for what you're challenged with, you will most likely come out with another diagnosis, such as depression, anxiety, and perhaps ADHD, but not executive function disorder. And in most all cases, won't be given a recommendation to get executive function skill training to remediate the problems. This condition is real. It has a diagnostic code, and it's impacting millions of adults around the world. And perhaps you are one of the millions. It isn't being identified and addressed properly and leads to so many other problems as a result of the lack of awareness of the diagnosis and the proper training to develop executive function skills. It's easy to see from this perspective how things have gotten so difficult for so many of you. And you are not powerless to change the course of your life. I did, and so can you. So let me go a little deeper with what executive function actually is, and what a disorder of executive function is, and what you can do to course correct this situation for yourself. Executive function is defined as a set of skills that regulate and control your ability to accomplish tasks and get things done. Well-developed executive function skills enable people to plan and organize information and then to act on that information. An executive function disorder interferes with your ability to organize your thoughts, remember important facts and events, complete tasks, and so much more. You can learn more about the signs of underdeveloped executive function skills by getting my free resource, 13 Signs Weak Executive Function is Holding You Back. The link is in the show notes. The impact of executive function disorder can be overwhelming to you as an adult. No matter how hard you try, your underdeveloped executive function skills render you unable to complete the simplest of tasks at times. You might find yourself in a state of panic when you can't find your car keys to get to work, or the work assignment you spent days on, it's due today. You can't find that. You couldn't even figure out how to start it, let alone finish it up. Your desk is such a mess that you can't find the important bills that you need to pay, and you know that they're already past due. You may slip into a state of mild or even deeper depression because you're missing out on opportunities and time is slipping away day by day. You know that living with structure and schedule would be great for you, and you just can't seem to manage to create one that lasts longer than half a day. Those around you who also have underdeveloped executive function skills, they understand you. And the rest of the people in your life, they just don't. You may be losing friends, jobs, marriages, and any sense of self-worth because you don't see yourself improving. Your life's only getting more difficult to manage. Again, not blaming anyone here, just pointing out the many losses. Is your marriage suffering? Are you in debt or going bankrupt? Was it easier to manage your life when you were single and before you had kids? And now that you're responsible for more than yourself, you just aren't able to successfully juggle it all? The typical steps that are suggested to take to help with executive function disorder are appendages or Band-Aids. And Band-Aids, fall off. To-do lists require you to actually do what's on the list. Seriously. If you could, you would. And even if you do here and there, you lack the consistency that adult living requires. And verbal prompts from others may no longer be possible because they're tired of that responsibility, or they feel like you're just another kid that they need to monitor, which is horrible for a marriage. So what's the answer? It's simple from my perspective. Develop your underdeveloped executive function skills in such a way that they replace your current poorly developed skills and that they become internalized so that they're automatic as your current ineffective skills. Most of the ways that we have all found to get through our days and survive with the way things have been, it isn't sustainable. It leads to burnout and worse. To me, trading in underdeveloped executive function skills for well-developed skills is a journey worth taking. Otherwise, the idea of having to consciously remember what you need to do to be able to do your life on your terms is exhausting It's exhausting to even think of it. And I trust you understand what I'm saying. Adventures in Achievement Foundational Skills Program, or AIAFS for short, was developed to address and transform the underdeveloped executive function skills that more and more adults are surfacing with. These are core capabilities such as working memory, initiating, inhibiting, conscious focusing, emotional control, task monitoring, and more. Additionally, AIAFS addresses the pre-skills that are needed to be more successful with the core skills, as well as your limiting beliefs and negative sense of self or identity. When all of these ingredients come together, as they do in AIAFS, it's a recipe for success. The link is in the show notes for more information. Our self-confidence is a direct result of our self-competence. And if we aren't competent, we can't really be confident. We can fake it, but that's exhausting and not a sustainable way to live. Plus, we know that we're faking it and we fear that we're going to be found out. And then what? It's a horrible way to live. I know I lived that way for years and was able to hide my shortcomings and look like I had it all together until I didn't. I trust you can relate. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast episodes and transcripts. Great free content, plus information on programs and products, including the groundbreaking online Adventures in Achievement Foundational Skills Training and Coaching Program. You can also learn about Dr. B's masterclasses on decision-making, time management, and banishing procrastination. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
ADHD coaching has its place, just as therapy does. However, they both fall short in helping you at a deeper level. In therapy, you might get to the core issues and talk about them, but not receive strategies or skill-building techniques. You might talk a lot about what you need to do, but not how you can actually do it. It's not the same. With coaching, you're taught skills and methods for your situation. However, if you don't have the basic executive function foundational skills to enable you to learn the skills of your sport or life, you're going to end up frustrated and possibly quit. If I'm an athlete in training with a coach to help me up my game and compete in the Olympics, that coach is observing me first and then teaching me to modify what I'm currently doing so that I do what will get me to the Olympics. I become that person. All of this is external, like a golf swing or baseball swing that's off in timing or angle. The coach sees the error, calls it to my attention, and then coaches me on what to do instead to get the hit. Again, all of that is external. They may address mindset or other internal things and make note of them. However, if they aren't teaching me how to transform what's holding me back, no matter what it is, then I'll still be held back and not achieve the success that I seek. What if the reason I'm missing the ball when I'm up to bat or unable to sink the ball when I'm on the putting green is mental or emotional and not behavioral? What if the cause of the misses are my limiting beliefs or my poor self-identity? Does the coach understand who I need to be first so that I can do what he or she wants me to do to make the hit? Does the coach help me with those aspects? Perhaps. It all depends on their training and their approach. I stopped thinking of myself as an ADHD coach and started thinking of myself as a transformational coach because it's the transformation that matters to you and matters to me. And without addressing what's needed for that transformation to happen, it just won't. I am uniquely qualified to guide you through your transformational journey. And I'll be sharing about that in a future episode, so keep listening. As a world composed of many societies, cultures, beliefs, and qualities of life, the one thing I know is that we are disabling those who inhabit our planet with labels and disorders for all. It's true that many of us have challenges with our thinking, behaviors, feelings, and more. However, these challenges are behaviors, not identities. Yet the labels would have us feel that they are who we are. And it's not. We are precious children of this universe, and our value is a given because we were born. We are pure potential, and we're filled with wonder, awe, curiosity, silliness, and more. We were filled with all of this before it was bred out of us. We have learned to look to others for permission to be who we came here to be, rather than turning inward to ourselves for that permission. I was this way years ago, and no more for me. There's a hollowness in the walking dead. That's what I used to call adults when I was a kid. There was no spark, no passion, no excitement in their eyes. And it made me sad to think that that was going to be me years down the road. There was no way that I wanted to join the ranks of the walking dead. I knew that I would get older and have adult responsibilities to be accountable for. However, I decided that I could and I would find a way to be that responsible adult while retaining the childlike wonder that I promised would go with me for my entire lifetime journey. I look at that achievement as one of my greatest wins. I love my childlike nature, even at 70. And I remember my mother in her 80s. I remember when she and I went to the beach one day and she was so quick to take off her shoes and socks and hop into the water long before me. There was that childlike wonder. She wasn't one of the walking dead. She had kept her precious childlike wonder alive throughout her lifetime. I was grateful to have recognized it in her and to have preserved it within myself as well. For over 30 years, I've worked with adults who came to me because of their ADHD, anxiety, depression, trauma, and more. And underneath each of those presenting issues, we uncovered the deeper and more significant issues. The solutions that were offered to me when I sought healing for myself weren't helpful for the most part. They were Band-Aids and temporary fixes to a much deeper wound. Over my lifetime, I've sought the deeper solutions, seeking the causes and the possible solutions for healing. Over the years, I've created many games for myself to keep life fun and engaging. I've taught myself and others to see the humor in human existence. We are human beings having a spiritual experience and spiritual beings having a human experience. And we're all doing the best that we can with what we have at any given moment. There's nothing more that we can do until we can. And when we develop our executive function skills and eliminate our limiting beliefs and create a new identity to move into, and it all comes together, life is amazing. I don't do superficial. I didn't learn how, and I'm not interested in learning how at this point in my life. Living full out is about depth, not superficiality. After a lifetime of being beaten down and shamed, ridiculed, bullied, and outright abused, you need a safe space with the right ingredients to heal and continue to grow. to focus on the solutions rather than the problems. I designed the AIA-FS program to be exactly that. And let me be clear. This is not a class or a course. It is not superficial or a quick fix. It's a comprehensive 7-month transformational program that guides you to develop your executive function skills and executive function pre-skills, as well as provides you with the scaffolding support and strategies that you need to actually develop your executive function skills and keep what you achieve. That's right. Keep what you achieve. When I'm training, I offer the specifics of what to do and how to do it. When I'm coaching, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm asking you deeper questions and eliciting a level of awareness in you so that you can evolve past where you left off years ago. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, if now is your time. So this is a perfect transition to the celebration of your wins. Please don't shortchange yourself and check out here or think that it's pointless or stupid to reward yourself for all the little things that you're supposed to do. There are important reasons to celebrate often and intentionally. And are you really going to make yourself wait for something huge to happen to celebrate? And does something huge happen every day? Probably not. But the kind of wins I'm talking about can and often do. And that means that you can increase your dopamine levels and motivation every day by celebrating your wins, big and small. So what's it going to be for you today? What are you going to celebrate? Maybe you decided to slow down so that you could learn and integrate rather than just consume information. That's a fantastic win. Perhaps you made a decision to change one thing that isn't helping you live the life you want. That's a great win. Maybe you're coming to believe that real change is possible for you and you're ready for it. That's an awesome win. You get the point. Celebrate all of them, big and small, and none of this half-hearted celebrating. You've got to mean it. Exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. You want your acknowledgement and celebration to register in your neurology with the power to move you and shift your state. Many of us need a higher level of stimulation or intensity for things to register. So if that's you, give that to yourself and exaggerate your celebration so you actually can feel it and benefit. A favorite quote of mine. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." This quote describes my life's journey. The paths I traveled didn't lead me to a deeper knowing or the quality of life I was seeking. Instead, I decided to go where no path existed and leave a trail for you, if that's of interest to you. We are all 100% responsible 100% of the time for the outcomes in our respective lives. I've learned to ask myself, how can I? Whenever I come to a crossroads, instead of creating defeat for myself. You can learn to think this way as well. It's a skill. And whether you're learning from my podcast episodes, free resources, or working with me directly, you're in my world and I'm here to serve your needs. It's up to you to take action so things can change for the better for you. And they can only change for the better for you if you change. As Jim Rohn told us, he can't do our push-ups for us. We have to do them to benefit. So here's the path for today. Make it a priority to get your copy of 13 signs weak executive functioning is holding you back. Next, get on the wait list for the AIA-FS program to learn how you can build your executive function skills and strategies, the Dr. B way. Enrollment is going to be opening up sooner than you think, so get prepared now so you know if this is your time and your opportunity knocking. I hope it is, and that we'll be working together soon. And if you want a place to hang out with like-minded listeners to my show, you can ask to join the Living Beyond ADHD Facebook group. Be sure that you're mindful when you ask, meaning that you answer the few questions we ask so you can be approved into the group. Otherwise, it won't happen. And once you're a member of the group, be sure to visit often and engage with us. Joining and never visiting doesn't help you at all. This is about follow-through for you. The Facebook group isn't a training group, although there are great posts to learn from and a supportive community to surround yourself with. As a member of the Living Beyond ADHD Facebook group, you're going to hear about training opportunities sooner, unless you're also on the AIA-FS waitlist. However, you do need to open and read your emails in order to know about these new opportunities. I promise that we won't flood your inbox with tons of emails. However, when we do send them, they have important information in them for you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share this podcast with others. I would also be grateful if you'd rate the show and write a positive or inspiring review on iTunes so I know that I'm meeting your needs. That helps the ratings, and more people like you will get to know about the show and be helped. That's you making a difference in others' lives, and that means a lot to me. Are you ready to stop your needless suffering? Have you had enough? Be sure to check out the show notes for the links and the opportunities available to you. I have real solutions to the challenges that you're experiencing. You know, time is our most precious asset, and none of us have time to waste on solutions that don't work. I would love to help you realize a new freedom. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you're eager to make positive changes in your life and stop overwhelm and confusion from derailing you, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love learning in an online group environment with personalized coaching or prefer the pace of guided self-study, Dr. B offers the skills, strategies, and individual support you need. Get started on your journey today by visiting the website at drbarbaracohen.com.